For the first time, the FDA has approved a pill for women dealing with postpartum depression. The drug is a once-a-day pill that will be branded as Zurzuvae. Postpartum depression is the most common complication for women who have just had a baby. Joining us now to discuss this is Stanford OBGYN Danielle Panelli. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let's start with the first thing. How does this pill work?
It's a great question. So this pill works by acting on something called GABA receptors in your brain. It's actually related to a hormone, progesterone, which is associated with pregnancy. And it's the oral form of a drug that was actually given IV in the past for this same medication. So we're really excited to have a more accessible option for people.
Now, how long does a woman take this drug if they've been diagnosed with postpartum depression?
This drug is unique in that it's a 14-day course. So it's taken once a day, usually in the evening, and they complete it after 14 days.
So after 14 days, and you have to take it with a fatty meal, and you have to make sure that you take it at a certain time, correct?
Yeah, and that's because one of the side effects is somnolence, and so they generally recommend taking it at nighttime. And also, it's important to note the FDA recommends no driving for 12 hours after you take this medication.
Yeah, this is a breakthrough for women that suffer from postpartum depression. I think 1 in 8 women are diagnosed. I think all of us probably know at least one person who has suffered through postpartum depression after having a baby or even at the end of pregnancy. What are the side effects of this drug, though? Because I know a lot of women, when they're diagnosed with postpartum depression, they're still breastfeeding. So what are there warnings in terms of what you can do while you're taking this drug in terms of breastfeeding and caring for your baby?
It's a great question. So like I said before, the main side effects of this drug are pretty minor. They were reported in about 5 to 10% of people in the trials that took the drug. Somnolence is the main one that the FDA wants everybody to be aware of, but also nausea, headaches, and dizziness are other things to consider. But in the grand scheme of, the symptoms of depression, they kind of pale in comparison for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of women suffer through postpartum depression and not even know that that's actually what they have. Can you give us a little background on why certain women get postpartum depression and others don't?
It's a great question. And that statistic of 1 in 8 people is probably an underestimate. We screen routinely for postpartum depression, but it can be diagnosed anywhere up to a year postpartum. So a lot of times, even in OBGYN practices, we aren't seeing people anymore beyond 6 weeks. And so I think it's probably even more common than that.
I'm curious, with this 14-day course, after the 14 days are up and women are still suffering from depressive symptoms, will they probably go on to another protocol and go on a more of a long-term antidepressant, or is it supposed to essentially cure your postpartum depression within those 14 days?
It's a good question. It's kind of 2 answers to that. So before we had this pill, we often had people on antidepressant medications that could take 4 to 6 weeks to have any improvement. And so in this trial, they were looking at this one drug, which they did show improvements in symptoms as soon as 3 days after you got the drug that were sustained up to 4 to 6 weeks. But I think it is important to know that for any medical condition, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And they did show improvements in remission, but I think it's important to have a multifaceted approach. If you take this drug, we would want to make sure that you had ongoing care with your healthcare provider to see if you needed additional care.
So encouraging to see that there is more help out there for women, because before it was everybody kind of had a different protocol. There were different solutions to these problems, and it's great to see there's some advancements in this, no question.
Yeah, we're really excited, and our hope is that we can get moms back to bonding with their babies and taking care of themselves faster with this. So
absolutely. All right, Dr. Panelli, thank you so much for Stanford Health Care.
Thank you.